So this is a committee of the whole meeting of the City of Bloomington Common Council for Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. We have 4 items on the agenda that we will hear this evening. And in the interest of efficiency, because we have some long titles and synopses of these ordinances, I'll just read the title and synopsis when we get to these ordinances in sequence. But the order we'll hear them is Ordinance 21-41, then Ordinance 21-42, then Ordinance 21-43, and then Ordinance 21-44. The first 2 have to do with refunding and refinancing of bonds, and the last 2 are both updates to Title 15 of Bloomington Municipal Code related to vehicles and traffic. So we'll go ahead and jump into the first one, Ordinance 21-41. The title of this ordinance is an ordinance authorizing the refunding of certain outstanding sewage works revenue bonds of the city, authorizing the issuance of the City of Bloomington, Indiana Sewage Works refunding revenue bonds of 2021 to provide funds for such refunding and the payment of costs thereof, and addressing other matters connected therewith. The synopsis is, this ordinance authorizes the City of Bloomington to issue its sewage works refunding revenue bonds of 2021 in one or more series in aggregate principal amount not to exceed $8,500,000. The 2021 bonds will be issued to refund the city's currently outstanding sewage works refunding revenue bonds, Series 2012A, and its currently outstanding sewage works revenue bonds, Series 2012C, all for the purpose of obtaining lower interest costs and a reduction of debt service payments on such outstanding bonds, thereby achieving significant savings for the city. And is it Mr. Underwood who's going to present on Ordinance 2141 this evening, or
I'm going to introduce? I have with me tonight, as you know, we have 2 bond refundings up to discuss tonight, which we're always happy to bring to you because we're not asking for money. We're actually asking to save money. These 2 issues will separately will generate savings of over $1 million over the life of the bonds. It will not extend the lives of either one. I have tonight with me Bruce Donaldson with Barnes and Thornburger and Buzz Crow with Otto Krohn and Associates. I'm going to turn it over. We're going to speak to both for efficiency's sake, and then we'll answer questions as each one comes up for your consideration. So introduce Bruce Donaldson with Barnes and Thornburger that'll talk about what we're doing, and then then Buzz will give us the details on the financing.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. Bruce Donaldson with Barnes and Thornburg. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward proposal to refinance outstanding debt. I think maybe at the work session, one of the council members likened it to refinancing your home mortgage, which always saves money. As Jeff said, we're not extending maturities. The final payment dates would remain the same. It would just lower the debt service every year. The first ordinance would be relating to refunding the outstanding sewage works revenue bonds of 2012A and 2012C. And so those bonds have a pledge of the net revenues of the sewage works system pledged to the payment. So by reducing the debt service, that will save money for the sewage works utility. The second one is a refinancing of the outstanding solar panel lease financing that was done a few years ago. And we're proposing just to refund that with a straight bond issue. The sources of repayment on that would remain the same. Buzz will get into that a little bit more, but it's basically any legally available revenues of the city subject to annual appropriation. But there have been some designated repayment sources that we'll describe here in a minute. But these are rather long ordinances because they go into all the details that bondholders are expecting to see in a standard bond ordinance. But the sum and substance of it is trying to save money on annual debt service for both of these financings without extending any maturities. And I think it's important to point out that all of the costs involved in issuing both of these bonds are included in the calculations of the savings. So the annual debt service would take into account the costs. The cost will not be in addition to or offsetting the savings numbers that you will see. So I'd be happy to let Buzz give his presentation that he's put together on this, and then we can entertain questions.
Thanks, Bruce, and thank you all. I'm going to share my screen here. And can everyone see the blue screen? Oop.
Not yet, no.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. The just as an overview, first of all, as Bruce indicated, these are two pretty straightforward refunding deals. We're going to go through a couple of the summaries of two illustrations of where we would expect to, if the deals were done today, what those current market expectations would be today. We just got recent updates from the two different underwriting firms that are working on these deals earlier this week. And I'm going to sort of talk about both of them, but there's going to be some general comments that I think, came up as a result of some of the questions at the meeting last week with the council. So I want to try to hit those things. And Bruce already did liken this to, I think Mr. Sims made the analogy of refinancing your home. We're not extending the maturities. It's all going to be paid off in the same time frame. And on the solar lease deal, we think our savings are going to be $400,000 to $500,000. Right now, it's at $500,000. The gross savings look like about over $570,000 in today's market. And on the wastewater utility, we're looking between $500,000 and $600,000 of net present value savings. So they're both considered revenue bonds. And one of the questions, came up, what's the difference between, the general revenue bond and the sewage works revenue bond? The general revenue bond can be funded in any manner that the city sees fit, but there will be no pledge of property taxes associated with it. It doesn't mean that you can't use property taxes, but there won't be a dedicated property tax levy like there are on a typical general obligation bond. And the solar lease has been split between the utilities, the park, and the RDC in the manner displayed up on the screen here. The sewage works revenue bonds are funded solely by the user fees of the wastewater utility, and obviously no property taxes associated with that, and the utilities pay 100% of those bonds. Okay, let me see. A couple of definitions that came up the other night. We wanted to talk. We mentioned the fact that these are both, right now the market is pushing things to premium bonds. And that's where they adjust the coupon rates up a little higher, but the net interest cost is going to be right now about 1.8% on these two deals. Each of these two deals come out about the same on the net present value savings, and the coupon rates are about 3%. The net interest cost, all in net interest cost, is about 1.8. But let me just comment. Bonds issued at par value is where the bond proceeds equal the par value of the bonds. If you issue $1 million of par bonds, you get $1 million of bond proceeds. Bonds that are issued at a discount, which is pretty common, that's where the underwriter proceeds are slightly less than the par value because they get their compensation out of that spread, or they use that spread to offer higher re-offering yields in the secondary markets. Now we're looking at premium bonds here, and that's where the bond proceeds actually exceed the par value, meaning that we'll get more bond proceeds than what we pay back. And then that's factored into the coupon rates on the bonds. I'm going to jump forward one more slide here. Both of these bond issues are considered revenue bonds because there's not a property tax pledge. The utility revenue bonds, again, they're secured solely by the user fees of the utility, and the solar refunding bonds have the general revenue pledge. Again, that's not a direct tax pledge. There's no dedicated property tax levy, doesn't affect the tax rates or anything in the property tax resource. And so again, while tax revenues may be utilized for bond payments, there's a difference between having a direct tax levy and a pledge of those levies. You could use any resources. And in fact, in the case of the solar park bonds, we've had this division between the utilities, the RDC, and the parks paying each portions of those bond payments every year. Again, the park may opt to utilize some of their property tax revenues or income taxes to make the payments, but there's no dedicated tax levy and no special tax rate. The RDC's TIF revenues are not really considered a tax levy. The proposed security on the bonds, again, are exactly the same as the current security for the existing debt instruments that they have. Looking at, I know I'm going a little bit out of order here. I had the solar one queued up first, but again, with respect to the payoff of the solar bonds, we need to deposit $11.6 million into the escrow account to take those bonds out at maturity or at the call date in January. And we're issuing $11.2 million in bonds for the new bond issue. And we're getting an original issue premium of $663,000, excuse me. On the uses side, we actually, account for all of the issuance costs and underwriting fees so that, the funding, the sources match the uses. But again, we're getting this $663,000 premium up front, and that's about where we project the gross savings to be. The premium, again, we expect that to be somewhere between $650,000 and $700,000, meaning that we'll get that much more cash than what we pay back. The coupon rates are going to, in today's market, would be factored in at about 3%. But when you look at consider the all-in true interest cost, where you factor in the fact that we're getting this big premium up front and not having to pay that part back, that drives the true interest cost down to under 2%, right about 1.8%. And that factors into a net present value will likely be somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. And right now, in today's market, we would hope that we're going to be closer to that $500,000 mark for net present value. Gross savings are always a little bit higher, but we look at net present value as sort of the ultimate test of savings. So what does the bond premium mean on this deal? It means that our proceeds are going to exceed the par value. We're basically getting $11.9 million in proceeds, and we're issuing $11.2 million in bonds, the par value of the bonds. So those premiums create really day one savings. And the all-in true interest cost is less than the coupon rate. So that's how the solar deal looks at this point. On the wastewater bond, which is really the one we're focused on with the ordinance that's being considered right now, in today's market, we're looking at a original issue premium of about $530,000. We have sinking funds and prior debt reserve accounts that need to be accounted for. I meant to fix this. This 2012 C series is where this additional 500,000 comes from. But these are cash on hand that are already in the sinking funds of the city that would be applied to the deal to buy the bond issue down to, the total amount of the escrow is about $7 million. The bond issue is only 5.7, but to pay off the existing bonds, I believe it's about 6.9 million plus the interest accrued through our date of closing. We're looking at a little over $7 million of principal and interest we'll pay off with this transaction. And then we will fully fund our debt service reserve. It'll be a brand new debt reserve that'll replace these two existing debt service reserve funds. And then our issuance costs and underwriting fees. Didn't mean to jump off of there yet. So the total resources and total uses of the funds is about $8.1 million. And when we look at the savings, again, we're looking at issuing premium bonds that it's actually probably higher. It's probably between 550 and 600,000 of bond issue premium. Coupon rates, again, are 3% in the market with an all-in true interest cost of 1.8%. And net present value savings on this illustration, they came out about 558,000, but we're trying to just put a range in here, realizing that until we actually close, the current market conditions on the day we close will really dictate how all these numbers shake out. But in today's market, we'd expect over 550,000 in savings. So again, that gets back to Jeff's original projection of about $1 million in net present value savings when you look at both of these refinancings. And again, what does this bond premium mean on this deal? It means that we're going to get more bond proceeds than their par value. We're issuing 5.7 million in bonds, and our total proceeds are going to exceed about 6.2 million. Again, that premium creates those savings really right on day one. We realize those savings because we're getting more cash than what we have to pay back. And again, that all-in true interest cost is less than the 3% coupon rate. And so this is really the all-in true interest cost is really the factor that's changing from what the prior bonds where they were priced. So again, we think it's a pretty straightforward situation. We're doing these, really at their earliest opportunity. That was a question that came up with the utility board the other day where, why didn't we do this last year when we did other refundings? And the reason is there's call protection on these 2012 bonds. Are not the first opportunity we have to call them is right after the first of the year. So that's why we're doing these just as soon as possible. We want to lock in $1 million of combined savings, before the market changes. The risk in not doing it expeditiously would be rates creep up next year. And we want you know, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, I guess, is a good way of, and then obviously the analogy of the refinancing your home, I think is really appropriate also. So that is my presentation. And I guess we'd open it up for questions, or Vic might have some other comments. I'll keep the screen up if for now, if we have any questions that go back to any of these slides. Thought I was going to do that anyway. Here we go.
Mr. Kelson, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Buzz and Jeff have discussed it very well. We're very pleased to be pursuing this, and we appreciate everyone's interest in it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, all. We'll go to council members for any questions on Ordinance 2141, which, as a reminder, is the refunding of certain outstanding sewage works revenue bonds. And we'll consider Ordinance 2142 in a moment. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes, thanks. Just a quick question. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned the allocation of bond payments were 53, 15, and 12% across CBU, RDC, and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes, 32% for the parks, yes, but
Or 32, I'm sorry. Those percentages, those allocations are fixed, correct?
yes, that was basically the cost differential when the energy savings bond, or actually it was a lease originally issued for that, but that was the cost allocations that were determined based on the cost of the project that was funded back in 2017. It wasn't that long ago, really, but we want to take advantage of lowering that interest cost. But,
Sure.
but those were set up due, that's the way the costs fell when the project was originally financed, and we're not anticipating any change there.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are there other questions from council members? Seeing none, we can go to the public if anyone from the public has comments. For those interested in commenting on Ordinance 21-41, please use the raised hand function to indicate that you'd like to speak. You can find the raised hand button in your meeting controls bar. And depending on the device you're on, you may need to click the reactions button, the more button, or the participants button from the menu bar, and then click raise hand. If you've called into the meeting via telephone, you can also raise your hand by dialing *9. And if none of those options work for you, you can also send a message via chat to the meeting host to indicate that you'd like to speak. So please use one of those methods now if you'd like to comment on Ordinance 21-41. Give it a few more moments. Nothing in the chat, I assume. Mr. Lucas?
No, not that I see.
Okay, seeing no public comment on Ordinance 21-41, we'll come back to council for any additional comments or debate. And seeing none, I would entertain a do pass recommendation for or motion for the ordinance.
Move do pass.
Second.
Okay, I will call the roll as I see it on my screen on the do pass recommendation for Ordinance 21-41. Councilmember Scambolari,
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
and Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So that is a 6-0 recommendation from the committee that we will deliver to the council in regular session next week. Thank you again for the presentation from staff, and we'll go ahead and move on to Ordinance 21-42, an ordinance authorizing the refinancing of a certain equipment lease purchase agreement of the city, authorizing the issuance of the City of Bloomington, Indiana General Revenue Annual Appropriation Refunding Bonds of 2021 to provide funds for such refinancing and the payment of the costs thereof, appropriating the proceeds derived from the sale of such refunding bonds, and addressing other matters connected therewith. The synopsis is, this ordinance authorizes the City of Bloomington to issue its General Revenue Annual Appropriation Refunding Bonds of 2021, one or more series, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $13,100,000, and appropriates the proceeds thereof. The 2021 bonds will be issued to refinance the city's obligations under the equipment lease purchase agreement dated November 30th, 2017, between Bank of America Public Capital Corporation as lessor and the city as lessee, related to the purchase, installation, and financing of certain solar panel systems and related work, all for the purpose of obtaining lower interest costs and a reduction of debt service payments on such outstanding lease payments, thereby achieving significant savings for the city. And of course, we just heard a presentation as part of our consideration of 2141, but does city staff or have anything to add on to the presentation they just gave on Ordinance 2142?
Nope, everyone is here, is ready to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move to council members for any questions on Ordinance 2142. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, I wonder if probably this is for Mr. Underwood, if you could explain the division between CBU, Parks, and the Economic Redevelopment Commission in the issuance of this lease agreement.
Yeah, this mirrors the cost breakdown of the facilities that have been installed. So when we entered into the lease and the construction of the facilities, we looked at all the different places that capacity and costs would be incurred and split it up based on that. So each of those groups are paying their distributive share.
So it's proportionate to the number of solar panels or solar arrays
Capacity
on buildings.
Capacity and cost installed, yes.
Okay.
Panels and cost, yes.
Right. Okay. So that proportion is not changing at all. It's okay. Thank you very much.
Other questions from council members? Seeing none, we will go to the public for comment on Ordinance 21-42. As a reminder, again, you can use the raise hand function to indicate if you'd like to speak. That may appear in different locations depending on how you're signed in. You can also dial *9 if you have phoned in, or send a chat to the meeting host if you are having trouble with the raise hand function. Give it just a few moments on public comment. Nothing in the chat, Mr. Lucas?
No, not that I see.
Okay. Seeing no public comment on Ordinance 21-42, we'll come back to the committee for any debate or comments.
Move do pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a do pass recommendation on Ordinance 21-42.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Donaldson.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask either Mr. Allen or Mr. Lucas if they had an amendment that they wanted to discuss.
Mr. Allen is in the meeting and might be better able to speak to this. I think there was an issue that just was spotted today, and I think staff is working on an amendment that may go out in the packet for next week's meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Allen, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. This We just had the amendment finalized today, or a draft of it finalized today. So this will go out into your packet for next time. This is going to separate out the appropriation part. There is a requirement for a public hearing for any kind of appropriation of the proceeds of this bond. So it'd just be a formality that we'll tackle on, I believe, December 1st is the current plan to do the appropriation of the proceeds from the sale of the bond to cover the refinancing of the solar agreement, to make sure that we are properly noticed for that public hearing. So the amendment that we're talking about for this particular bond ordinance would strike out that appropriation language, and then you would see it in a separate additional appropriation ordinance that would come to you.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's all right. Thank you for the additional context and background. We do have a do pass recommendation pending. I will call on members as I see them on my screen. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that is a 6-0 do pass recommendation on ordinance 21-42. Moving on in our agenda. Thank you.
all.
Yes, thank you all for the presentations on those bonds ordinances.
Thank you.
Moving on in the agenda to ordinance 21-43, an ordinance to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic, regarding amending section 15.32.90 to adjust the time of a limited parking zone on 2nd Street. Sections 15.12.10, 15.12.30, 15.16.10, 15.20.20, 15.32.80, 15.32.100, and 15.37.20 to reflect the changing of the name of Jordan Avenue to Eagleson Avenue. Sections 15.32.30 and 15.32.80 to add angled parking and no parking zones to Illinois Court. Section 15.32.100 and Schedule O, loading zones, to add one loading zone to East 7th Street. And the synopsis for the ordinance is, this ordinance amends Title 15, Vehicles and Traffic of the Bloomington Municipal Code, and comes forth at the request of city staff and the Parking and Traffic Commission. The ordinance makes the following changes. It changes the time limit of a limited parking zone on 2nd Street. It amends the code to reflect the changing of the name of Jordan Avenue to Eagleson Avenue. It adds angle parking and no parking zones to West Illinois Court. It adds a loading zone to East 7th Street. I believe we have Mr. Farshi from the Planning and Transportation Department to present this evening.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Amir Farshi, Long Range Planner for the Planning and Transportation Department. Let me share my screen. Can you hear me okay? And can you see my screen? Great. So the ordinance proposes various amendments to the Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic. Title 15 is the title of the code, subject to frequent change and revisions. These proposals are the result of feedback from the Planning and Transportation, Engineering, Parking Services Division of Public Works, and legal departments. The purpose of these recommendations is to address issues that have come to staff's attention through public requests, commission's recommendations, or 180-day orders. Some items are related to safety issues, improving visibility for people, safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, traffic calming, and housekeeping changes. These requests for changes to Title 15 were presented to the Traffic Commission and Parking Commission. The ordinance makes the following changes to Title 15. The ordinance changes the time limit of a limited 11 parking spaces on 614 East 2nd Street in front of the Elm Restaurant. The ordinance changes the 1 hour free parking to 2 hour free parking. And it changes the enforcement hours to start from 8 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. The ordinance changes the name of Jordan Avenue to Eagleson Avenue. The ordinance adds approximately 21 angle parking spaces to West Illinois Court in blue areas on the map. And it adds 2 no parking zones in red areas. And the last change is the ordinance adds a loading zone at 120 East 7th Street in front of the Butcher's restaurant. The details and maps are included in the meeting packet. Please let the staff know if you have any questions, and let me introduce the staff who are in this Zoom meeting. We have Beth Rosenbarger, Planning Services Manager, Michelle Wall, Parking Services Director, and Ryan Cox, Parking Enforcement Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farshi. If we don't have any additional presentation from staff, we'll come to council members for any questions on the ordinance 2143. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Farshi. Just for the benefit of the public, could you share the date the new name Eagleson Avenue will actually take effect?
Yes, the street name change was reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission at the regular hearing on September 13th, 2021.
And when will the name change actually happen? When will we start using Eagleson Avenue? I think it was next February, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. This is Beth Rosenbarger. February 2022, I'll get the exact date for, it might be February 1st, but I'll get the exact date for the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members? Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Mr. Farchi. I can't seem to find it, but maybe you could share with me on the Illinois Court off of Illinois Street parking. Was there a net increase for parking spaces with this ordinance?
I think these changes, the changes effectively codify what residents practice for years. And I think maybe 1 parking space is added, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Beth, do you want to add anything?
Pardon?
I asked Ms. Beth Rosenbarger if she wants to add anything.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess technically it adds all the spaces that are shown because they weren't per the code legal parking spaces, but I don't have the number. I think Mr. Farshi said it, of maybe via engineering, they were able to squeeze in an additional spot compared to how people were parking before.
Okay, thank you.
Guess Councilmember Piedmont Smith next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Farshi, for the presentation. I have a question about Jordan Avenue north of 17th Street. That part of Jordan Avenue, I believe, is to be renamed as well. Is that purely an IU-owned street, or why are we not seeing that renaming?
Yes, I'll take that one. It's because it's IU owned. So there are any references wouldn't be in city code to what is currently Jordan Avenue north of 17th, because we can't have traffic regulations in that space since it's not our street. So that's why, but the name is changing as well.
Okay, thank you. And just out of curiosity, what is the new name for north of 17th?
Oh, shoot.
That's okay. It's not relevant, really.
Fuller.
Fuller?
I
Okay.
believe that's correct. I'll double check real quick, but yes.
All right. Thank you.
No, you're right. Named after Miss Maddie Fuller. But
Yes.
that's there you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Councilmember Smith, that's all your hand, I believe. Go
Yes.
ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. The loading zone that's going to be added on East 7th Street in front of the restaurant. Can you say why that zone is being added? Is it per the restaurant request?
Yeah, it is based on the ongoing coordination with the adjacent businesses, part of the 7-line project, and yeah, based on those coordination, the loading zone was requested near the restaurant.
I appreciate you saying that. It's just a little difficult on some of those roads now, and so if we're responding to the restaurants that are there, I think it's great. So thank you.
Do we have additional questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the public for any comment on ordinance 21-43. If you would like to make a comment on the ordinance, please use the raised hand function to indicate you would like to speak. You should be able to find the raised hand function on your meeting control bar. You may also need to click the reactions button, the more button, or the participants button from the menu bar and click raise hand. Or if you've called in on a phone, press *9. Failing any of those options, you can send a message via chat to the meeting host and we will indicating that you'd like to speak. Any comments in the chat, Mr. Lucas?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Seeing no public comment on ordinance 2143, I will return to the committee for any additional comments or debate on the ordinance. Or questions if folks still had any.
Move do pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for a do pass recommendation on ordinance 21-43. I will call the roll as I see it on my screen. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
And I vote yes. That is a 6-0 recommendation in favor of ordinance 2143. Thank you, staff members, for the presentation.
Thank you.
And moving on in our agenda, our fourth and final ordinance for the evening is ordinance 21-44 to amend Title 15 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic regarding amending Chapter 15.32 to add a new schedule for reserved motorcycle parking, Section 15.37.210, to clarify that the Parking Services Director or designee may sell up to 80 employee parking permits total in zones 4 and 5. Section 15.40.19 to provide that vehicles with accessible decals, placards, or plates may park in accessible parking spaces designated for electric vehicles, whether or not the vehicle is electric or is being charged. And section 15.48.70 to delete the administrative fee for towed vehicles. The synopsis of the ordinance is as follows. This ordinance amends Title 15 Vehicles and Traffic of the Bloomington Municipal Code and comes forth at the request of city staff and the Parking Commission. This ordinance makes the following changes. It creates a new schedule designating on-street reserved motorcycle parking. It allows the Parking Services Director to sell a total of 80 employee parking permits annually in zones 4 and 5 total, instead of a maximum of 40 spaces in each zone. It clarifies that anyone with a disability placard plate, or decal may park in accessible parking spaces designated for electric vehicles, regardless of whether they have an electric vehicle or are charging the vehicle. It deletes the administrative towing fee currently paid to Bloomington Police Department. And is it Mr. Farshi or Ms. Wall who's going to present on Ordinance 2144?
I'll present, but I'm asking Mr. Freshy to pull up the documents. To show maps.
Thank you, and you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Okay, just a moment. Okay, the city staff from the Planning and Transportation, Engineering, and Parking Service Division of the Public Works and Legal Departments have compiled a number of recommendations for changes to Title 15, the Vehicle and Traffic section of the Bloomington Municipal Code. The purpose of these recommendations is to address issues that have come to staff's attention and through public request and commission's recommendations. The ordinance amending Title 15 and respective maps are included in my presentation. So we'll get started with the first one, which is the reserved motorcycle parking space. This did come to us as a public request. We are proposing two motorcycle spaces.
I'm sorry, could you make a little bit larger, please?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
Thank you so much.
Can you make it a little bit bigger, Amir? I'm sorry. Thank you. Two reserved motorcycle parking spaces at 112 West 6th Street. And then we are going to, the space was made previously, and we're going to codify it, one reserved motorcycle space on 100 West Kirkwood Avenue. And that is section 1. I will go ahead and move on. Section 2 allows so currently right now we sell downtown employee parking permits. The request is that I have 40 available spaces to sell per code in zone 4, and I have 40 in zone 5. I'm just asking for that to be combined to 80. Now that the division of spaces have been made back in 2019, I'm finding a lot more businesses are sectioned in zone 4, requesting a lot of my, I have to be involved a lot with approving the extra request over 40. There's very few in zone 5 being requested. So I just asked for the combination of zone 4 and 5 to be a total of 80 downtown employee parking permits. Section 3, do you have that picture? Thanks, Amir. Appreciate it. Section 3 is I wanted to give you a bird's eye view of these two ADA spaces. They're located right when you turn into the right in the trades garage by the elevator. These two spaces are also electric vehicle charging spaces. As everyone knows, federally it's mandated that the ADA takes precedence. And so I believe Councilmember Sims last time asked for maybe a more visual of this. And I do want to clarify, these two spaces were the only two spaces available based on how the garage was designed. So we could not move the EV charging stations. But we did catch it before 4th Street. So I'm pleased to share that 4th Street does not have any ADA parking with EV charging stations. And the last one is, hold on, section 4 is that we're requesting to delete the administrative towing fee for the Bloomington Police Department. As you know, the parking enforcement now reports through the Public Works and through the Parking Service Division. And once parking gets to negotiate the towing contracts, which is currently in legal, we plan on to revisit the towing fee issue. Most likely we'll turn it into a citation, but right now the contracts are being reviewed by legal and the conversations are being had with the towing company. So we do ask that the Bloomington Police Department collects no further fees on our behalf. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wall.
Mhm.
Do we have questions from council members? I see Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Wall. And again, thank you for that visual. I need to see things like that. Mr. Farshi earlier said that Title 15 is subject to frequent changes and updates. And I agree with that. But with regard to the charging stations and the accessible parking, and I don't think it'll be an issue now, obviously you don't as well. But in the future, as electric cars may become more prevalent, and do you anticipate any type of conflict between accessibility or increased number of electric vehicles that may need to utilize that charging? Do you see a solution, or first of all, do you see a potential problem coming up? And then have you thought about a solution?
So one of the greatest things with, I believe the RDC recommended that we be able to continue to add additional charging stations in each of these garages. The infrastructure's there. So if we'll have people stationed in both of these facilities. And if we see an issue, or, if it's recommended to add stations at any time, we have the capacity, the infrastructure is there. We have the capacity to do that. And we will be able to make that happen. Yeah, I do see it increasing. We currently have 4 in our fleet. So I do see it increasing, but the great thing is we have flexibility.
Okay, thank you. And did I hear you say that in the picture that we saw, that charging station, it cannot be moved?
Yeah, currently.
Due to the design? Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct. That is correct. The infrastructure is built in where it would be too costly to move these, but we can always add.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Other questions from council members? I see Councilmember Piedmont Smith. Go ahead.
Yes, on the same issue of the ADA parking spaces that are also charging spaces for electric vehicles. Are there other ADA spaces in that garage? Is this the trades garage that we're talking about?
This is trades, and yes, there are other ADA spaces. They are in compliant. I believe them being so close together, I'm pretty sure there's 10 in each.
In each garage?
ADA spaces in each garage. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there additional questions from council members on Ordinance 2144? Seeing none, we will go to the public for any comments on Ordinance 2144. Same instructions as before. As a reminder, you can use the raised hand function in Zoom if you would like to make a comment on this ordinance. Or if you've dialed in by phone, you can press *9 or send a chat to the meeting host if you're having trouble with the raised hand function. Give it a few more moments. If anyone attending as a member of the public would like to speak, please use the raised hand function or send a chat to the meeting host to let him know that you would like to speak. Nothing in the chat, Mr. Lucas?
I see no requests for comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks like we have no public comment on Ordinance 2144. So we will return to the committee for any debate or comment from council members. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Can I have another question? Is this time for that?
Of course.
Ms. Wall, and I was just thinking, and again, I'm okay with this ordinance and I will support it. But I'm trying to work this in my head with the accessible parking and the charging station, but there's more accessible parking available. But the accessible overrides the charging station. So what if they're occupied by accessible vehicles and you have a charged vehicle? is there a mechanism, and I'm not advocating this, but is there a mechanism that would direct maybe one or two of those vehicles to move to other accessible spot? So does that make sense? I mean, I wouldn't want a charging vehicle to go without being able to utilize that that service if there are other accessible spots.
Yeah, there's other accessible spots and there's other EV stations in the garage. There's 10 each.
Oh, thank you. Okay, it's been a while since I've been there. Okay.
Yeah, there's
that makes
just
perfect sense.
2 EVs. There's 10 EVs and 10 ADA spaces. And just so you know, we caught it before it went to the full phase in 4th Street. So this issue is not in 4th Street. There's only 2 spaces we're talking about, and they're in Trade's garage, and they're right at the entry.
That's in Trade's garage. Thank you.
Yes.
No, you're absolutely right. I even took a tour and it's totally spaced. Guess I'm getting my garages confused. Thank you. That lessens my concerns. So
great.
Some of our most vulnerable population. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. I was just going to ask, is there a sign or something there that would direct the person to the other accessible spots in the parking facility?
Okay, so I don't have a good shot of it, but I can get another picture. So right by the 2 accessible spots in the EV station, there is a door entry hashed out area, and that's where the rest of the ADA spots are. So if they move forward, probably 2 car lengths, they're going to see the other ADA.
They'll just see them?
They'll see them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. I just wondered if it was easy for them to, find a spot if those were taken up.
Yep.
Okay.
They're right there all in one row. And
Cool.
I'll head in the next presentation. I'll be glad to share another visual. That always helps.
I appreciate it, Ms. Wall.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet.
Additional questions or comments from council members?
Move to pass.
Second.
We have a motion to recommend a do pass to the council. I will call the roll as I see members on the screen. Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So that is a 6-0 vote to recommend passage of Ordinance 21-44. Thank you, Ms. Wall and Mr. Farshi, for the presentation and support on that ordinance. And that is all of the items on our agenda this evening. I think we are ready to close the meeting unless anyone has additional questions before we go. Mr. Lucas, anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, seeing none, and if there are no objections, then we are ready to rise and report our recommendations to the council in our next regular session. Thanks all.
Thank you for chairing, Councilmember Flaherty.
Have a good night.
Thank you.